Sometimes things just go into our unconscious and we don't even know where the ideas come from. But it isn't just a trivial idea, because it's this thing, it's this is that's in the middle, meaning that these two things are equal to each other. The very act of living is to suffer, and the very act of suffering is to live. And I say this all the time, life is suffering. We don't get to choose not to suffer. What we get to choose is what we're going to suffer for. And we might say, oh, that's such a pessimistic view. No, it's really not. It's actually an incredibly optimistic point of view. Because the fact of the matter is that you're going to do this. And that even in the midst of this, even despite however bad this can be, however bad you can possibly imagine that this can be, that there can be something in here that makes it all worthwhile, which is the idea of meaning. There's an idea there of purpose. The whole idea behind the concentration camps and the gulags was to try to strip people of this thing, of meaning and purpose. If you're suffering for a reason, you can see your way through it. If you're suffering with a purpose, you can see your way through it. And you don't even necessarily have to see an end point to it. So for example, I mean, you can imagine people, I'm sure some of you guys know people who have had some sort of a severe illness, some like stage 4 cancer. That means that they're not going to recover. I mean, 99% chance they're not going to recover. And yet people will still continue to live despite this. A good friend of mine, his wife has had stage 4 cancer for 4 years. She was expected to survive 1 year. She's on her 4th year. How is it that she's doing it? Well, my friend, he's doing a lot of this. He's suffering. And he told me he suffered for years. And just knowing that he was going to lose his best friend. And their love story is incredible in terms of how they met. They met, and then they went to jail. And then, long story, at the end of all of it now, they're millionaires. And they have multiple houses, and they've got 3 great children, and they have all this stuff that's fantastic, and life is coasting, and all of a sudden one day they're at the mall, and she slips and she falls, and she breaks her hip. And they're like in their early 40s or something like that, mid-40s. Who breaks their hip in their mid-40s? So they go, so when they go to the doctor, they do x-rays, and they find at that point that she has cancer in her bones. And they give her 1 year to live. It's just that. They went shopping one day, and then you find that out. A couple of days later. And just as they think that life is kind of like, we've overcome all of this, we get to enjoy the fruits now of all of this, things are great, this is what happens. And what makes it even more difficult is that they're devoutly religious. So how is it that you can look at it at that and say, well, hold on now, if you believe in God, how could you have brought us through all of that suffering, finally brought us to this point of overcoming and comfort, and then take this all away? And when his wife goes, I don't know how long he's going to stay. I'll kind of leave it at that. But I've known him, I knew him before I was I knew him before I was a teacher. I've known him for quite a while. He's a great dude. And yet, still, she wakes up every day and does this. He doesn't have that. He doesn't have that meaning and that purpose in all of it. So he's stuck simply in the suffering. And for him, that's what life is right now. Only going through that. Now, everybody in here, I imagine, is suffering to some extent. I mean, even if it's just, I don't know, you go to McDonald's and you don't want onions, they put onions on your cheeseburger. Some of you maybe have parents who are going through this right now, family members who are going through this right now. Some of you maybe have lost somebody recently. Some of you are going through some very difficult emotional things. And we shouldn't put it on a scale of like, oh my gosh, you're upset because they put onions on your cheeseburger? I mean, it does seem like a silly thing, right? We're pissed off because they gave us too much food. And there are places in the world that'll be like, let me get this straight. You're angry because they gave you too much food? Yeah, they gave me too much food and I'm mad about that. Like a friend of mine, she gets her drinks with light ice. And it pisses her off when they put regular ice in her light. I don't know how you measure light ice versus regular ice. And I ask her, so you're angry they put too much water in your water? She says, yes. Life, and I look at her and she knows me very well, so she'll say, yeah, life is suffering. And then some of us have these extreme things. And one of the problems is that we try to put it on this continuum of oh, my life is so much worse than yours, or that person over there's life is so much worse than yours. If you're going through suffering, you're going through suffering. And then the thing is that you don't even have to, you know it. It's one of those very few things in life that you could absolutely know. I wonder if any of you have ever been in love where you weren't sure if you were in love, and so you're thinking about, am I in love? Is this what it feels like? You have to think about it. Maybe you're even Googling, what is love? You know, don't do that. You're going to get a song stuck in your head for weeks. But maybe you Google to find out, is this what it is? Is this what love feels like? Is that what I'm feeling? You don't have to look up what is suffering. You know what that is. Because you feel it in your pit, and it's unavoidable. And that's because these two things are interchangeable. To live is to suffer. To suffer is to live. And you don't get to choose not to suffer. What you get to do is to choose what you're going to suffer for. And so often in life, we don't make a choice to suffer for one thing or the other. We simply choose to suffer. And then that takes away this thing of meaning and purpose. If you're faced with two bad options, choose one. At least you'll get to choose your own suffering, your own path of all of it. But so often we sit back and then life happens to us. And we complain that life is unfair. Is life unfair? Yes. Now what? Is life going to oppress you? Yes. Now what? Are people going to treat you badly? Yes. Are people going to be selfish? Yes. Are you going to treat people badly? Yes. Are you going to suffer? I'm sorry, are you going to be unfair towards people? Yes. And you won't even mean to do it sometimes. It just happens. And afterwards you sit there and you realize, I can't believe I did that.
It's life.
What's that?
It's life.
Yeah. And you're going to suffer for what people do to you, and you're going to suffer for what you do to people. Even when you're trying to alleviate suffering, even when you're trying to do the right thing. And that will be the thing, that sometimes you'll sit back, you're going to suffer for something tremendously, and you're going to say, I can't believe I did that. I was trying to make things better for people. I was trying to make things better all around. And you just end up making things worse. Because that's life. C'est la vie. It's life. What's that? Yeah, that's life. Those old songs, man, they got some wisdom. And you can see that, by the way. Because you can see music where the whole idea is, hey, man, we're going to suffer, so let's just have as many good times as possible. And take a guess, what are those good times going to lead to eventually? Death? Yeah, geez, okay. Eventually, yeah. It always goes back to death in this class. It's also going to lead to suffering. And when you die, there's going to be suffering as well. He's going to die. What's that?
Your dog is going to die.
Yeah. I even think some of you guys are going to die.
Wait, some?
I wish it's an epic death.
Eventually. What's that?
I wish it's an epic death. Probably like jumping off a helicopter.
Jumping off of a cliff?
Helicopter.
Oh, a helicopter.
You should die with a bang. With like an actual bang. Grenade out.
Alright, so let's steady this ship real quick. We're not talking about killing ourselves here.
That is the wackiest way to die.
To kill yourself?
Yeah.
Why?
Because, like, you're really gonna die.
Oh yeah, you're gonna die.
Yeah, but what's wrong with it?
Because, like, why kill yourself when somebody else could kill you? Like, you just
Just give a crackhead $20? Is that what you're saying?
Hey, it's real good.
Because you could save $20. How about donate $20 to your favorite charity and then kill yourself?
I guess. I don't know.
You even have a favorite charity?
Oneself. Charity begins at home. No, and by the way, this is the other view. Like, to kill yourself is the easy way out. Maybe not. But the thing, I guess the question is, who owns your life? You. Yeah, and you'll hear this kind of thing all the time. Like, maybe you're a person who has like tremendous talent. I don't know, let's say you're very talented. And isn't it funny that we'll hear stuff like that? Like, people will die. They'll die young, or they'll commit suicide. They'll say, "Oh my God, they were so talented." Like, if they weren't talented, we wouldn't care. It's like, well, I mean, not really particularly talented. Or somebody was attractive. Oh my goodness, they were so handsome, or they were so beautiful. Or, oh my God, they seem to have it all together.
Those
They
things
seem
can
to
get
be
you
so.
killed.
What's that?
Those things can get you killed.
How do you mean?
People get selfish and like jealous of you, so they kill you. No.
God damn.
Jealousy turns to
People
anger.
just kill you just because.
True story, man.
How do you mean?
People just kill you just because, man.
People kill you just because? Well, I mean, all of these things, I guess, can lead to, and by the way, the opposite of all these things can lead to as well. If you're not particularly talented, maybe you shouldn't go bungee cord jumping. You know? Whatever it is, if you're not particularly smart, maybe you should be trying to fly a plane with no training. So yeah, I guess all of these things can lead to it. But the point is that no matter what combination of these things that you are, they all kind of end in the same kind of a life. I mean, sorry, life ends for all of them, not the same kind of a life, sorry, but they all end at the, life ends for everybody. And so when these things can lead to it also because, you can be such a, I don't know, maybe you can be such a kind soul that everything here just hurts so much, it becomes difficult to continue. Or you can be so smart that life can just seem overwhelming to you. In other words, you can perceive so much coming at you, and you can see so much of the world that, like unintelligent people, by the way, there is a correlation here between intelligence and joy. In other words, people who are highly intelligent, even though they tend to be smarter, have more degrees, see the world a bit differently, tend to also see more of the negativity of life and try to and struggle with it. Happiness in an intelligent person is probably one of the rarest things I know. I think it was Steinbeck who said that. And so, I don't know. Would you rather be dumb and happy? Like if you're not paying attention, not you guys. You guys are a bit young, but I mean, especially for older people, if they're not paying attention to the world right now, and it concerns me because you guys are paying attention to the world, I think, too much. In other words, you guys are seeing things like, have you guys heard that we're about to all die in a nuclear war?
Yeah.
We're not going to die in yeah.
The world is scary.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that you wake up, you guys wake, like when I woke up in the morning when I was in high school, it was like, I don't know, the first thing you do is you throw on a CD, a CD. And you listen to some music, and then you go to school, and then your teacher talks to you. But right now, you guys will get alerts on your phone like, Putin threatens to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. NATO promises to retaliate with nuclear weapons. World War III imminent. All right, so anyway, let's learn about metaphors today, guys. But Scal, the world's going to end. Yeah, eventually. So what? What are you going to do today?
Live.
Life is suffering.
Eat.
Yeah, live, eat. And by the way, living in such a way so that when tomorrow does come, because it will come, and when tomorrow comes, you're ready for it as well. But the idea that going back to what someone was saying, suicide, I mean, don't do it. Okay? Don't do it. There's a reason that suicide is a disease of the young and the wealthy. In other words, people tend to commit suicide when they're very young. Very few people tend to commit suicide when they're like in their middle ages. Most of the time it's when we're very young, teenagers, or old, or wealthy and older. Those are the two demographics that tend to do it the most. And that should tell you something. I should tell you that whatever it is that right now seems so damaging to your life that it's not worth living, you're wrong. It is worth living. It is worth living. And the data tells us that people who try to commit suicide, close to 90% of them afterwards say they regret it, and immediately they regretted it. As soon as they did what they did, they immediately regretted it, and they were thankful that it didn't work. But there are long-term things that go along with that. One of my former students tried to kill herself. She took too many, I think it was Vicodin, if I'm not mistaken. And her internal, she survived it. She's thankful that she survived it, and yet her internal organs are all screwed up for the rest of her life. She tried when she was 19. So from 19 until the end of her life, she has to have special treatments because her organs are screwed up from having done that. She's thankful that she survived it, But she's also a special personality because now she's 22, 23, I think it was. I think she is. And she got a DUI back in January. She has no recollection of ever having gotten in the car, so she's still living in such a way. And every once in a while I hear from her and she'll just be like, I'm still thankful I survived it. I'm still thankful I'm like, yeah, but you're not going to someday, man. I have a guitar pick in my drawer over there from a student of mine who committed suicide. She used to take her IDs, school IDs, and she would outline a guitar pick, and then she would cut them out to play guitar. And she would give me guitar picks made out of her student IDs. She was a musician as well, And I don't know, she was this, and it was one of those things that when I knew her, she actually wasn't a student of mine. She used to come around all the time. She'd hang out in my room. She had friends who knew me. She'd come out and hang out all the time. But she was such an incredibly sensitive soul because she saw so much of the world, you know? And I'm not saying like, and I hate saying this, please forgive me for saying this, because I hate saying things like this, but you'll understand at some point, within a few years you'll understand. She saw the world in such a way that a lot of us see it now, we're like, I see all that too. No, I'm telling you, she was different in the way in how she saw the world. Very different. You know, she was talented, she was this. But she could just tell early on that she was on her way out. She didn't end up graduating from high school here. She didn't finish. She was one credit shy. She was one credit shy, and that was it. She could have gone back and gotten it. She didn't. And then after graduation, I think she was looking at herself and she just thought, life isn't hard enough. She wanted to live life on hard mode, so she went and got a red devil tattoo on her neck.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I remember just sitting there and just thinking like, life is just not hard enough, you know? So I found out what happened, and yeah, people will look at that and they'll say like, oh my gosh, she took the coward's way out. No, it's her life. It's her life. I mean, I'm sorry, but I look at some of you guys, and forgive me, understand where I'm saying, I'm coming from love when I say this. A lot of you guys are taking the coward's way out of your own life right now. School is so goddamn easy, and we're bending over backwards to help you guys get ahead. And we're shrugging our shoulders, and we're just failing anyway. Why? Because it's easier. It's easier, and that's the coward's way out too, because you think you're going to be taking care of your whole life. And by the way, you might be. I'm not saying that you're wrong in terms of that, but what I'm saying is that you could be so fucking much more than you realize. You could be, if you didn't take the coward's way out. And there's so much that you could possibly be. And there's so much that you could stand up against with the world. There's so much that you could do if you became that strong character in the world and you had children, you passed those same traits along to them. You want to save the world, that's how you do it. You save yourself. And then you have kids and you save them. That's how you change the world, one person at a time. Not by marching in the streets with some stupid placard that with a saying that you don't even believe in that doesn't mean anything ultimately. But that's easy to do. That's the coward's way out. The rest of the world should change. It's so hard to change yourself and to realize that you could be so much more than what you are. You know? Most of you are these things. And we have to accept this. And we have to see that these are all challenges that we can overcome. Yes, your life is your own. Absolutely. You don't owe your talents or your intelligence to anybody else. You only owe it to yourself. That's true. But you owe it to yourself. Saying it's the substance of life. It's the stuff that life is made of. And the root of personality. Because that's the thing that creates your personality. It's what creates you as a person. It's only suffering that makes us persons. It's the only thing that makes you. And we can draw a distinction between a person and a human being. For those of you guys who like games, you know NPCs?
Yeah.
What's an NPC?
Non-playable character.
Yeah. So what does an NPC do?
They sit around,
Like average stuff.
sometimes selling stuff.
It does what it's programmed to do. And you have a world that wants to program you. And I don't think that there are people sitting in rooms, you know, in dark rooms, they're like tapping their fingers together and twirling their mustaches. How can we program people? Well, I think there are people who do that. But by and large, I think what you're going to find is that we're programmed in certain ways. If you ever want to, I'll leave it at that. These are people who are programmed. And the thing about it, they don't even realize that they're programmed. And you might be programmed. I might be programmed. What I mean by that is just like socially, we're trained in certain ways. And then you have the person who's the real player. And that's you. And that's the person who has the personality, who can respond and react to situations. This person is kind of set up to respond and react to situations in certain ways. This person right here is the big question mark. So I guess that's what I'm saying, that this is you. And what it is that you fill in right there is entirely up to you. It's shaped through suffering. And you suffer and it hurts it, but I guess it's good. Because one of the things it does is it makes you empathetic towards other people who suffer. You know, it helps shape your personality. But you have a say in it. In other words, you have a say in how it is that you respond to all of that. And so, how do you respond? I don't know, man. I guess I have to check back with you in 30 years, right? 40 years, if I'm still here. And ask you, how did things turn out? How'd life turn out? How'd it go? I don't know. I don't know. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Tuesday. Huh?